They laughed when Charles said he would succeed. Not because his dream was impossible. Not because the odds were against him. They laughed because they believed he was destined to fail. His own friends doubted him. His neighbors mocked him. Even some family members quietly gave up on him. But years later, those same people would stare in disbelief at what Charles became. Because they never knew what he was hiding. And that secret would change everything. Charles grew up in a town where expectations were low. Most people followed the same path, lived the same life, and accepted the same limits. But Charles was different. He spent nights studying, planning, imagining a future nobody else could see. Yet every time he spoke about his goals, people rolled their eyes. Was he dreaming too big? Or were they afraid he might actually succeed? Nobody knew the answer yet. The criticism never stopped. Teachers questioned him. Friends joked about him. Strangers treated him like an unrealistic dreamer. Every failure became proof for the doubters. Every setback became another reason to quit. And little by little, the voices around him grew louder. But one question haunted him every night. What if they were right? That thought nearly destroyed everything. One rainy evening, Charles sat alone staring at a notebook filled with unfinished plans. The room was silent. The future felt uncertain. For the first time, he considered walking away from his dream forever. Maybe success belonged to other people. Maybe he wasn't special. Maybe all those critics had seen something he couldn't. Then his phone rang. And the caller changed his life. But the message wasn't what anyone expected. Before we continue, if stories about resilience and impossible comebacks inspire you, take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs motivation today. Because Charles's journey is only getting started. And the next chapter became even darker. The voice on the phone belonged to an old mentor. Someone Charles hadn't spoken to in years. The mentor said something simple. Stop proving yourself to them. Start proving yourself to you. Those words hit harder than any criticism. For months, Charles had been fighting the wrong battle. And suddenly, he realized the real enemy wasn't outside. It was much closer than he imagined. The next morning, Charles made a decision. He stopped explaining his dreams. Stopped defending his ambitions. Stopped asking for approval. Instead, he disappeared. Not physically, but socially. While everyone watched distractions, Charles focused on growth. And nobody noticed what he was building. Until the first shocking twist arrived. Months passed. Then one day, Charles failed again. A major opportunity vanished overnight. The project he'd invested everything into collapsed. His critics celebrated. Some even said this was the final proof he would never make it. What nobody knew was that the failure revealed something valuable. Something hidden beneath the surface. And it opened a door nobody saw coming. Inside the wreckage of his failed project, Charles discovered a problem nobody else was solving. Others saw disaster. He saw opportunity. Others saw defeat. He saw information. Could failure actually be an advantage? The answer seemed impossible. Yet Charles decided to pursue the idea anyway. And that's when the risk became enormous. He invested everything he had left. His savings. His time. His energy. If this failed, there would be no backup plan. The pressure became unbearable. Friends urged him to quit. Family members worried constantly. Even Charles questioned himself. Was he brave? Or was he making the biggest mistake of his life? The outcome would shock everyone. Weeks turned into months. Results came slowly. Painfully slowly. Nothing looked impressive from the outside. In fact, it looked like another failure. People whispered behind his back. The doubts returned. But Charles kept moving. Because deep down, he sensed something changing. And soon, proof began to appear. A small breakthrough arrived. Then another. Then another. The momentum was tiny. almost invisible. But momentum has a strange power. It grows quietly before becoming impossible to stop. Charles understood this. The doubters did not. And that difference would soon matter more than anyone realized. Because a second twist was approaching fast. Just as things improved, betrayal struck. Someone close to Charles leaked private information. Plans. Ideas. Strategies. Everything. The betrayal cut deeper than failure ever could. Who could he really trust? For a moment, it seemed the damage was irreversible. But the betrayal produced an unexpected consequence. One that changed the entire game. The leak attracted attention. People who had never heard of Charles suddenly became curious. Investors started asking questions. Industry leaders noticed his work. The very event meant to destroy him created visibility instead. Sometimes enemies accidentally become messengers. Charles couldn't believe it. Neither could the person who betrayed him. And the story grew stranger from there. Opportunities began appearing everywhere. Meetings. Partnerships. Invitations. The same people who ignored him now wanted access. The same critics who mocked him wanted conversations. But Charles remembered every insult. Every dismissal. Every laugh. Would success finally bring satisfaction? Or was something still missing? The answer waited just ahead. One evening, Charles attended an event packed with influential people. Years earlier, he wouldn't have been allowed through the front door. Now he was the guest everyone wanted to meet. The room felt surreal. But then he noticed a familiar face. One of his harshest critics. Standing only a few feet away. And what happened next stunned everyone. The critic approached slowly. No arrogance. No jokes. No insults. Instead, he apologized. Publicly. Sincerely. The room fell silent. Charles had imagined this moment for years. Yet victory didn't feel how he expected. Why? Because he had learned something important. Something far bigger than revenge. Validation from others suddenly felt meaningless. The approval he chased for years no longer mattered. Charles realized success wasn't about proving critics wrong. It was about refusing to let their opinions define reality. That lesson transformed everything. And it prepared him for a revelation nobody anticipated. Including Charles himself. While reviewing old journals, Charles found something shocking. His earliest goals were far smaller than his current achievements. The dream everyone mocked. He had already surpassed it. Without noticing. He spent years chasing a finish line he'd crossed long ago. How many people do the same thing? The realization changed his future forever. Instead of celebrating, Charles started helping others. Young dreamers. Underdogs. People drowning in doubt. He shared the lessons he learned through failure, betrayal, and perseverance. And something remarkable happened. Their victories became his greatest reward. But an even bigger challenge was quietly forming. And it threatened everything he had built. A new competitor emerged. Younger. Hungrier. Determined to surpass him. For the first time, Charles stood on the opposite side of the story. Would he become the doubter? Or would he encourage the next generation? The choice carried enormous consequences. And his decision surprised everyone. Instead of blocking the competitor, Charles offered guidance. People thought he was crazy. Why help someone who could replace you? Because Charles understood a truth most people never learn. Success isn't a limited resource. Helping others rise doesn't make you fall. Yet not everyone agreed. And conflict erupted immediately. Critics returned. This time with a different argument. They claimed Charles was weak. Naive. Too trusting. The accusations spread quickly. Once again, people questioned his judgment. Once again, he stood alone. But history had taught him something valuable. And he refused to repeat old mistakes. Charles stayed focused. No arguments. No public battles. Just action. While others debated, he worked. While others judged, he improved. The pattern looked familiar. Almost identical to the beginning of his journey. Except now, Charles understood the game. And that knowledge became his greatest weapon. Years later, the results became undeniable. The competitor succeeded. Charles succeeded. The people he mentored succeeded. The cycle of doubt had been broken. The same world that once laughed now pointed to him as an example. But one mystery remained unsolved. And it may be the most important part of this story. What was Charles's real secret? It wasn't talent. It wasn't luck. It wasn't intelligence. His greatest advantage was simple. He kept moving when progress was invisible. When nobody believed. When evidence suggested failure. He continued anyway. That single choice separated him from everyone who quit. But the final question is even more powerful. Tonight, somewhere, another dreamer is being laughed at. Another person is being told they're not good enough. Another future success story is facing impossible odds. Maybe that person is you. Maybe you're standing exactly where Charles once stood. So here's the question that nobody else can answer. When the world doubts you, will you prove them right? Or will you prove them wrong?